Hello YouTube, this is Captain Ball here again, and I have a very special rifle for you today. That's a Germanic Jaeger rifle made in Austria in the 18th century, in the first half of the 18th century. Of course it was born as a flintlock arm, but later it was converted to percussion in the 19th century. This is a typical hunting arm for the Central European region, so this is very close to my heart. Follow me and see the history of this rifle. These robust rifles evolved from the 17th century Jaeger rifles, hunting rifles of course. The bore is always rifled. It usually has 6 to 12 grooves, and the twist rate is quite fast compared to today's standards, compared to what we use today for patch round balls. It is usually between 1 turn in 30 inches or 1 turn in 40 inches. That's quite fast for a land bore. The stock is always a full stock. It is made of walnut or other kind of fruit woods. It is always equipped with a patch box, with a wooden patch box, not a hinked patch box like on the Pennsylvania and Kentucky rifles. It is usually equipped with a set trigger system. And I really have to say that they are very well balanced arms. These rifles were never fragile, they were built to last, so when the percussion era came, they were mostly converted to percussion system. And it was quite easy to do. You just had to replace the hammer with a percussion hammer, the frizzen and the pen was removed, the touch hole in the bore was drilled out, and the drum and the nipple was screwed into it. And there you go, your percussion rifle was ready. Shooting an antique gun for the first time is always a thrill. I have fired many of these Germanic Jaeger rifles and I know that they are all individual. Each has a completely independent personality. For many years I was using spit patch, meaning that the lube on my patch was nothing else but saliva. But recently I started to use a mixture called the patch milk, made by a chemist friend of mine. Although my spit patch was accurate, I have to admit that the patch milk is an excellent invention. It keeps your bore clean and also keeps your fooling soft. It is very easy to clean the barrel after shooting. My first charge for the rifle was a moderate charge. A 15.9mm round ball, a 0.5mm thick patch, 75 grains of 1.5F Swiss powder with 40 grains of semolina as a filler. This has two purposes. First, there is a rough part in the rifling at the bottom, and it helps to increase the volume of the charge, so the bullet is seated at a perfect rifling. Second, it saves your patch from damage. But before we go on, let me thank you for your support. Your donations through Patreon, buying our American Civil War authentic cartridge boxes, or percussion revolver cartridge formers, or US Arsenal Stadias or 19th century rangefinders, or rubber printing plates for cartridge bundle wrappers, they are all a great help for us. This helps us keeping the quality high and keeping the Cap and Ball YouTube channel alive. Thank you very much for your help. And this is the first 5 shots, ladies and gentlemen, with the original Jaeger rifle from the 18th century made by Markus Zellner in Wien. Look at that. I have 4 shots, let's say a bit bigger group than the size of the 10 ring, which is just excellent. I have one flyer here, but that's also in the vital zone, because we are making a hunter's group here, not a precision shooting group. So I don't really care if it's not hole in hole. This is still in the vital zone, which is just perfect for hunting. I have a really large lead slug here, lead round ball. which delivers just enough energy for any big game in Hungary. I really love that. I really love that. I really have to say that after nearly 300 years, this rifle is still okay for hunting, still very good for hunting. The distance was around 50 to 60 meters, so this is a good open sight hunting distance. So I really have to say that we are ready. We are definitely ready for the hunting season. I also collected some patches from the ground to check if the consistency of the patch is good. You have to be able to read your patches, and if it's torn, if it's damaged, then it's not good. But these ones are okay. Look at that. Just with a little exaggeration, I could also fire it once more, but that's not true. It's good. The rifling does not cut it, so now the load is perfect. These Germanic Jaeger rifles play a very important part in firearms history, as they are the predecessors of many hunting arms all around the world. Just think about the Kentucky and Pennsylvania rifles. When the immigrants from Europe traveled to the New World to make settlements, they brought the Jaeger rifles with them. But they soon realized that the kind of powder charge and the large lead bullet that was needed for these rifles is just not economical in the New World. Why? Because resources were limited, which means that the lead and the gunpowder had to be replaced, refueled from the European continent. So they designed their own version of the Jaeger rifle, which was a longer barrel, smaller caliber, and slower twist rate rifle, the Kentucky and Pennsylvania rifle. And in the first half of the 19th century, when the industry in the United States got stronger, they could increase the caliber as well. Now that was the time of the Hawken rifles. So there's the connection between these two types of rifles. My rifle was made by Markus Zellner, as it is written on the bore. The Zellner family is a well-known gunsmithing family in Austria. They were operating in Zell am Wallersee, in Vienna, in Salzburg. Our hero, Markus, was born in 1693 in Zell am Wallersee, and he completed his apprenticeship in his father's, Balthasar Zellner's, gunsmith shop, and then he started his journey all around Europe to learn about gunsmithing. He returned to Vienna in 1726, where he established his own gunsmithing shop from money loaned from the family of his wife, and this was the time when he became a master gunsmith. He died in 1758, which means that this rifle was made between 1726 and 1758. Probably in the second half of his work, this rifle was born, but it's quite old and it is still in very good condition. It was converted to percussion in Vienna by a very elegant method. So if you check the metal parts of this percussion conversion, it is just excellent. So this is why we don't touch it and we don't reconvert it back to flintlock, because it is just such a beautiful work that it must not be disturbed. The weight of this rifle is 3.3 kilograms, the barrel length is 69 centimeters, and the caliber of the bore is 16 millimeters. It has 7 right-hand grooves, really deep grooves with rounded lands, meaning it was designed for patch round balls, but the twist rate is 1 turn in 31 inches, quite fast. But it is really a patch round ball rifle, because nobody was using conical bullets in the 18th century. The only marking we have on the bore is the maker, Markus Zellner in Wien, and also we have number 2 on the tank, which means that it was a brace. There must have been a number 1 rifle somewhere out there. It was a beautiful pair, I'm pretty sure about it. Even if you know the maker of a rifle and the approximate date of manufacture, it is very, very hard to find out anything about the original owners. Now this rifle is an exception, because we know much more about the original owner than in the case of other rifles. Because we have a coat of arms inletted into the wrist area of the stock. And this coat of arms belongs to the Esterhazy family. This is probably one of the most important Hungarian noble families. The arms of the Esterhazy family shows a golden griff with a saber with a golden crossguard in one hand and 3 red roses in the other hand. The griff is crowned and it's standing on the prince crown, showing that the family is the prince of the Holy Roman Empire. The Esterhazy family owned estates on the western side of the country, like Kismarton, which is called today Eisenstadt, that is located in Austria right now, which has a beautiful Baroque castle there. But you can also visit Burg Forchtenstein, which was called Frockno by those times. Frockno is a beautiful castle. It is still owned by the family, and it has a beautiful hunting and military firearms collection, so it's worth a visit, very well worth a visit. Or you can also visit Fertőd. There is a beautiful Baroque castle also associated to the Esterhazy family, which is such a beautiful place to be. The family itself is very important for the Hungarian history from the political view as well, because they donated two palatines to the country. The palatine was the second in rank compared to the king, so this was a really, really important position in the 16th, 18th and 19th century. Probably the most important member of the family was Pál, who was raised to, who became a prince in 1687 when he saved the Holy Hungarian crown from the advancing Turks, and he also took part in the siege around Vienna against the Turks on the side of the emperor, of course. Probably the highlight of the hunting history of the Esterhazy family is associated to Pál Antal Esterhazy III, who organized extravagant driven hunts in the southern part of the country near Tamási, Ozora. This area, today called the Gyulai hunting territory, is still very rich in game. So probably one of the best fallow deer populations and red deer populations are located here all around Europe. So this is a beautiful area. So if you ever visit Hungary and you want to hunt, I really suggest you to visit Gyulai, because it's a beautiful place to be. Now, the hunts that they organized back in the beginning of the 19th century, we don't call that ethic today, because it was such a very different word that you don't really understand today. You just cannot measure those times by today's standards. The preparation for these hunts started 2 or 3 days before the event. First, the beaters surrounded the closed garden, because they were organizing these events in closed gardens, and they compressed the game from the 4 sides into the central area. For the night, they lit large fires so the game cannot escape and go back to the natural habitat. Just 1 day before the event, this little closed central area was surrounded by a fence, which was a net, so the game could not escape anymore. And all around the net, there were shooting pavilions placed. One pavilion was accepting 2 hunters, 6 loaders, and also stands for 12 rifles. When the shooting began, the frightened game started to run all over the fence looking for escape, but there was no escape. The pavilions were very close to the fence, so the people there was just shooting until all the game was killed or wounded. There were hunts when there was 1,000 or 1,200 game at the cataflak. Now today we call this hunting unethical. Why? Because it does not fulfill one very important aspect of hunting, giving chance to the game. We also know that by the 18th and 19th century there were people who said that this is not hunting. They were very well-known noble hunters who said that they will never enter that kind of hunts. They were hunting the same way as we do today, from a shooting stand or from stalking. So the kind of hunting that we today with modern or original traditional black powder rifles, it is the same that was used in the 18th century and 19th century as well. Prince Pál Antal Esterhazy III was an extravagant person, but his estates could not finance his beautiful hunts, which means that he went bankrupt, and he died in 1866 in poverty. His estates were placed in the hands of curators. So this rifle is in beautiful condition, meaning that it is good for shooting and probably good for hunting. Of course, we don't really hunt with original rifles like this, so if you are planning to do the rough kind of hunting that we usually do with black powder arms, then select a repro, it's much better. But I really have to say that there is something in these original rifles that move you. So if you want to know more about the way they use these guns and the culture and the milieu of that era, sometimes you have to use the rifle. And this is what I'm going to do. But first, I will have to check if it is safe to shoot. So this is why I'm going to visit the Hungarian CIP-proof house. So let me guide you through the process, how they check these old rifles, if they are safe for shooting and hunting or not. So if you wish to shoot or hunt with a historical rifle like this, then it is wise to check it, to have it checked with professionals. In Europe it is done by the CIP proofing houses, and we are at the CIP proofing house here in Budapest, Hungary. And the reason is very simple. You have 3 basic reasons why to check the quality and the condition of your gun. First of all, it's a historical item and you don't want to damage it. So checking it before shooting, it is essential to keep its historical value. Second, you have to comply with your laws. And in Hungary, the law says that all the guns that we use for shooting or hunting must be CIP proved. And third, it must be safe. And this is probably the most important question. So whenever you shoot a firearm like this, then first you have to check it. You have to have it checked by a professional. And that's why we are here. My friend Emil Hamza, secretary of the Hungarian CIP delegation, will guide us through this process. Emil, what is CIP?
Hi Balázs. CIP is an international organization dealing with safety control of firearms and their ammunition. In its role, it's pretty similar to the American SAMI. The major difference is that SAMI is an organization between manufacturers. The approach is a little bit different because the CIP is an agreement in between the states, member states, while SAMI is operated by the manufacturers.
So CIP is an international organization, and SAMI it's an industrial organization?
Yes, but we do actually the same. We would like to ensure the maximum safety of the user of guns and their ammunition. What is important in CIP that we deal not only with modern firearms but also with black powder firearms as well.
So whenever a muzzle-loading gun or any kind of firearm is manufactured in the CIP member countries, it must be checked. Am I right? Every single gun?
So you are right, Balázs. If a muzzle-loading firearm is manufactured in the CIP member states, like in Italy, but even in Hungary and in the Czech Republic, there is some manufacturing of these arms, then each and every single gun has to go through a safety testing process, which consists of visual inspections, functional inspections, and also proof firing with a higher load than the normal for that particular firearm, which ensures that the user will not reach that stress with the gun.
The inspection has 3 stages: pre-proofing, proofing, and after-proofing. The process starts with the visual inspection, whether the arm has all the necessary markings, like the name of the maker, country of origin, caliber, serial number, and maximum allowed charge. The next is to check if all parts are absent of damages that can affect the safety of the gun. For this inspection, the gun is completely disassembled. The first job is the inspection of the barrel. This is done with a bore scope, searching for bulges, cracks, and corrosion in the barrel and at the breech area as well. The drum and the nipple are also closely examined, especially the threads of the rifle, so it won't spit the nipple into the head of the user. The next stage is the lock. If it has a half-cock, it has to hold the hammer firmly, and also the full-cock position have to be safe from unintentional discharge. The bridle, sear, and spring, they are all examined. And then comes the stock. It is checked for cracks and holes from wood worms that can render the use of the arm dangerous. If there are any abnormalities that reduces the safety or that ensures that the proofing will damage the gun is rejected. If everything seems to be good, the rifle proceeds to the proof tests. For all the inspections, the barrel is separated from the stock. There are many reasons for this. First, the metal surfaces contacting the stock have to be examined as well. Second, the old wood will not be stressed by the proofing charge. This is also the time for properly measuring the specifications of the bore. When everything is checked and okay, the rifle is loaded with the proofing charge. The proofing charge is dependent on the caliber and the type of the gun, but always mean a higher propellant and projectile weight, and of course much higher gas pressure than the standard service load of the rifle. Proofing is done using Swiss black powder, as this product delivers the highest pressure and energy among all the commercially available black powders. The charge is ignited with a fuse.
Matt?
Okay. Nagyjából 15 másodperc volt előbb. Let's check it. After the proof test, the gun is examined again to record if there were any changes in the status after the high pressure charge. If no changes were recorded, the gun will receive the necessary black powder proof marks. To save the historical value, these marks are placed carefully not to damage the visual and physical value of the gun.
Okay.
The rifle survived the proof testing. We didn't make any damage to decrease its value. It's been marked with the appropriate black powder proof marks, and it's ready for use.
This is not the only 18th century Jaeger rifle I handled recently. A good friend of mine acquired an Austrian model 1769 military Jaegerstützen that gave me an idea. I was the first one to open its patchbox, and there was a simple but useful old volumetric powder measure hidden in the compartment that I decided to replicate. Here is how I did it. The body is made of 12mm brass tube with a length of 8.5 centimeters. The little key acting as the stopper is fired from a 16mm iron rod. The rod is drilled and tapped with M3 threads. I drill an 8mm hole to one end that will accompany the housing of the key. The housing itself will be an 8mm brass rod. Now it is time to solder the parts together. The M3 brass screw is also soldered into the body of the key. Now the housing of the screw is also drilled and tapped. Although I'm using a lathe here, all these stages can be done with simple tools as well. Now it is time to turn the piston. The diameter of the wood rod has to be 10 mm. And the measure is ready. Now all you have to do is mark your charges on the piston. Even if the rifling is very good in this rifle, we can be sure that it will be needed at least 1 or 2 months to find the right load for a rifle. If you just want to punch holes in the paper, it's easier because you can reduce the charge as much as you want. But if you want to hunt with the rifle, then you have to find a suitable load, a strong enough load for hunting as well. Now this is what we are going to do with this rifle. This is my second shooting session with the rifle to test it to various distances up until the end of the open sight ranges. I replaced the nipple and I will tell you later why, but the charge is the same 75 grains of 1.5 F powder. So ladies and gentlemen, this is my 45-meter group. Why 45? Because the game usually never enters the scene at the desired distance, so if you only practice at 50 meters, it will mean that you will just get too accustomed to seeing the target at 50 meters, so whenever you're preparing for hunting, change the distances from 20 meters to 100 meters. For an open sight rifle like this, let's say the outer edge of the target distance is 80 meters. Now this is 45 meters, and you can see that the 3 shots are within the size of the 10 ring, so this rifle is perfect for hunting at 45 meters or 50 meters or very close distances. I was aiming at the bottom center of the black mark, which means that the group of the rifle is just at right place. But I would also like to test what the rifle does at larger distances, so let's go out to 80 meters now. If we are looking for a patch roundball rifle, we are usually looking for 1 turn in 60 or 1 turn in 70 inches twist rates. This is perfect for roundballs. You can load high charges, the trajectory will be flat, and you can reach out to 150, 200 meters if you want to shoot a game. Of course, it depends on the eyes and the sights you have and the practice you have. If you are looking for an all-around rifle that can shoot conical bullets and roundball as well, then you can choose the 1 turn in 48 inches twist rate, which is good, but not the best for conicals or for patch balls. Under 1 turn in 48 inches, we consider the rifle a conical bullet rifle. Now, this has 1 turn in 31 inches, and it's still a patch roundball rifle, which means that I will have to limit my load. I have to reduce the black powder load. I have to reduce the muzzle velocity of my bullet to be able to compensate the fast twist of the bore. So, this is why it is very important to be able to check the twist rate of the bore. That's a very simple task to do. Let me show you how to do it. Measuring the twist rate is not a difficult task. You need a good quality ramrod and a tight-fitting jag and patch combo. The combination must be so tight that your ramrod will turn with the rifling. Push it down to the breech and mark it with a tape. Create a little flag from the tape that is in line with the sight. This will be your marker to show you the turn of the rifling. Now gently pull out the ramrod and let it turn with the rifling. Pull it out until it makes a half turn. Now mark the ramrod again with a tape. Measure the distance between the 2 tapes, multiply it by 2, and there you go, you have your twist rate. The first 50-meter group was quite satisfying. It was good for hunting, but to be honest, I was expecting something more from a beautiful rifling like this, so I decided to replace the nipple. And why? It is quite simple. If you check the original 19th century nipples, you will notice that the hole on the top of the nipple, where the percussion cap goes, it's small, while it is large at the bottom. Let's say 1 millimeter at the top and 4 to 5 millimeters at the bottom. This reverse cone was used because the quality of the priming powders and the black powder was varying a lot, so they thought that if we have a large hole at the bottom, it will result a much secure ignition. Now, today's nipples are completely different. The V is in the other side, the cone is in the other side, which means that the touch hole is, let's say, 2.5 millimeter at the top, while it is only 0.8, 0.7 millimeter at the bottom. So it is completely opposite, and this kind of modern method speeds up the flames much better, so it is resulting in much more consistent ignition and much more secure ignition, by the way. So according to my experience, just by replacing the nipple, you can gain a lot in accuracy. Let's check what happens. And these are my first shots at 80 meters with the same 75 grains of powder. As the rifle was not grouping at all, I decided to modify the powder load. First I increased, then I started to decrease the charge. Sometimes such small differences as 1 or 2 grains can have a dramatic impact on the accuracy of the arm. As a final solution, I reduced the charge to 65 grains of 1.5 F Swiss powder. So ladies and gentlemen, this is the 80-meter group of the rifle, and it tells us a lot how challenging it is to find a good target and hunting load for an old rifle like this. I was starting somewhere here. If I remember right, that these were my first shots with the 75 grains of 1.5 F Swiss powder, and it was not grouping well, so I decided to change the charge. First I increased the charge. I had probably this shot, and this shot fired with the increased charge of 85 grains of 1.5 F Swiss powder, but it still did not group. So I went into the other direction. I decreased the charge, and this was the result: 3 shots at 80 meters, and at a good elevation as well. This was 65 grains of 1.5 F powder, which is not the highest charge ever, but it will be enough for hunting with this heavy lead slug. It will kick. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think we have the right load for the rifle, because if it groups well like this at 80 meters, it will group well at 45 meters as well. So now I have only one more job to do. I have to control this charge at 45 meters as well. So let's check it. And I really don't have to explain it. I think the rifle is good. There is no problem, and there is no difference between the 75 grains and the 65 grains of powder at 45 meters. So, ladies and gentlemen, I have the load for the rifle. And this tells a lot about the sights of the rifle as well, and probably the original charge of the rifle. Because the open sight hunting distance was the same back in the 18th century and in the 20th century as well. It's, let's say, under 100 meters, but rather under 80 meters. Which means that your open sights have to be regulated to shoot that ball on a trajectory that will stay in the vital zone of the game, let's say plus and minus 4 centimeters compared to the line of sight. And this rifle can do it. I have to say this rifle can do it, which means that probably we are very close to the original charge of the rifle, the original muzzle velocity of the rifle. Okay, let's go hunt. So I finally arrived to a load that is suitable for target shooting and for hunting as well. There is one more thing I could do to improve the accuracy, which is connected to the muzzle crown of the rifle, which is a bit damaged. We could cut, let's say, 0.5 centimeter from the bore and redo the muzzle crown, which I'm not going to do because that is damaging the historical value of the rifle. And to be honest, I don't really care about accurizing the rifle more. If I'm going to hunt with the rifle, I'm going to stalk the game within 50 meters and then it's done, then no problem. I'm not going to use the rifle for target shooting every day, which means probably I'm going to shoot it once or twice a year, which will be just enough, and this accuracy is satisfying, no problem with that. So ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for tuning in. You've been watching the Cat and Bow YouTube channel. If you like what I do, then please subscribe, share, comment and like. This is how you can help the channel to grow. This is the last video before Christmas, so I would like to wish you a Merry Christmas and also a Happy New Year. Let's make 2021 a much better year than 2020. So ladies and gentlemen, stay cool and keep your powder dry.